Thank you for that. All right, intro for Reverend Todd Glacy. He's class of 2014 at Chime, and he describes himself as an enlightenment advocate, an empowerment educator, and instigator of joy. As a speaker, musician, facilitator, mentor, and interfaith minister, he loves nothing more than sharing his passion and talents for bringing people together in creative community and inspiring them to tune in and reconnect with their truest and best selves in order to experience life with purpose, passion, happiness, and well being. Reverend Todd Glacy, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, so my chime journey or post chime journey, just after hearing from a number of you checking in, it seems like there's a lot of similarities about what draws us, to this, the spiritual path, especially when for me it was this recognition, kind of, it had been going on pretty much my whole life that, I discovered music at a really young age and knew there was something really magical about it that I couldn't really understand. And also the same thing with nature. I grew up in upstate New York in the Adirondacks, and there were these experiences you have growing up that were just, mystical would be the word I'd use now, but at the time you didn't really understand what they were. But my life, was it evolved and went through a lot of different things, and it seems like certain core elements kept were always present in my life. One being music, of course. I ended up going to college for music. I graduated from Berkeley and, worked for years and years scraping a living as a professional musician. But I also had this sort of spiritual side that was always curious, like exploring different traditions and different methods and just, and especially being in nature, just learning to sit and meditate and be quiet and listen. And I just knew there was a lot going on. And so at a certain point in my life, it all kind of coalesced. So what was happening for me was I'd gone through a bunch of different careers, and as I discovered chime and got into chime, I was actually working as a school guidance counselor. So I had been doing that for about 10 years, and I had the realization that there's something about education that I really enjoyed, and something about working with people to help them sort of make sense. But I also realized that for me, working in public school environment was not doing it for me. And at the same time, for probably that same 10 years, I've been doing a lot of stuff outside of that venue, but in more of a spiritual with things with sound and, sound healing and kirtans and just musical things that were spiritually focused, which was a big shift for me. The shift being going from perceiving myself as an entertainer to perceiving myself as a facilitator and using music not as a means of entertainment, but as a means to create community and to help people sort of tap in and become aware of this spiritual thing that music and sound is so good at leading us to. So anyway, when I finally got to chime, all these things were coalescing, and I realized everything was making sense and nothing in my life had been wasted. And chime was exactly what I was looking for and needing. And one of the things that they talked about a lot in chime was this idea of stepping into our pastoral authority, the idea of giving myself permission to put myself out and say, yes, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is worthy and worthwhile, and you know all of these things that might have sort of been floating around, like, me, a minister, can I do that, blah blah blah. So when I realized, through chime, I mean, chime was kind of the icing on the cake of realizing that pretty much everything we do can be ministerial work. It's more an attitude of how we do what we're doing. And I realized that I was already doing a lot of these things, but it was nice to go through chime and just the spontaneity, the creativity, the openness, being able to facilitate and create space, and then just really trust that whatever needs to happen will happen. So it really was was empowering for me in a lot of ways. And then I like to say that I felt like I got shot out of a cannon after I got ordained. The day after I got ordained, I put in my notice at the school I was working at and told them it was going to be my last year working as a counselor. And from that point, I just launched in. So I have been a freelance, self employed, gigging minister pretty much ever since. I spent a number of years traveling with my partner, Sue. We ended up doing the van life thing for a number of years, traveling cross country, and I would book gigs as a guest minister and facilitator, doing gong meditations and speaking and music things at a number of different types of spiritual places, churches, yoga studios, spiritual centers, things like that, which was really awesome because I got to see a lot of things. COVID hit and it kind of put the kibosh on all that. And it was kind of the right time because I did find myself sort of burning out a little bit, and being packed into a van really tight with Sue for 2 years was, you know, we survived, but it was nice to come back to Portland, and we actually managed to get a place during the pandemic. I worked part time as a long term sub in Scarborough, where I used to be the guidance counselor. And so I guess my overall point is that I really feel like, the instigator of joy, the empowerment educator, the enlightenment advocate, that it kind of explains, no matter what I'm doing, that's sort of the attitude I like to have and bring to it, because I feel like anything I do is an opportunity to share that with people. This idea of connection, this idea of joy, of happiness, of love, of well-being, whatever it is. And so I do a lot of different things. I won't bore you with all of them. At this particular point in my life, interesting that Myra told the story about the senior center, because I do play music at senior centers quite a bit. I just show up on my guitar and harmonica and sing Johnny Cash and things like that. And it's amazing the joy that it brings to people. And so I definitely consider that part of my music ministry. I still do a lot of workshops and facilitations around sound and things of that nature. And I still guest speak as a minister at a number of different churches in the area. And this past fall, I actually got back into education. I started working as a adjunct professor at USM, teaching a course on spirituality and healing, which really felt good. So I realized that, yes, now I can scratch that itch of myself of, being able to be in education, and really felt like it was really worthwhile, not just for me, but for the students, and helping them, be empowered and understand, spirituality, when we get into it, is just, it's such a big thing. And so actually looking at it from a point of wellness, physical wellness, emotional, mental, and spiritual, and how it's all connected, and helping people sort of make sense of it all. I mean, religion can get very sticky, and spirituality, all these things, and it can be really hard to find our way. And it's one of the things I really enjoy doing, is just trying to help people empower themselves to find their way towards their joy, their bliss, their purpose and meaning. And I guess I'll just end with, there's a quote that's been attributed to Picasso that I really like. It's the, the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to share it with the world. And so I can't think that's kind of what I do. It's just, enlightenment is when you're lit up and you're just like, yes, and when we do that, it's kind of contagious. And so that's who I am and what I do. And my timer just went off. So thank you all for indulging me.
Thank you so much, Todd. Um, I love the story. I love um, the exuberance. And when you said lit up, I was like, yeah, that's what you project. You just light up. It's like you're living your purpose. It's beautiful to see. Anybody have any clarifying questions for Todd before we move on to the next person? We're going to have general questions at the very end, but go ahead and speak up, just popcorn style, if you have something for Todd.
Todd, hi. It was wonderful to hear you. You're an inspiration to me. I feel like you pretty much told my story. except for I didn't go to Berkeley. But it's absolutely lovely what you do and what you're doing. I feel like I'm doing a lot of spiritual work and a lot of healing also for a lot of people in a lot of different cross sections. I also used to do Reiki in hospital, Brigham and Women's Hospital for like 3 years for the doctors, nurses, and staff. Um, but I want to follow this path, and so I would be delighted to exchange information if we could talk a little bit, and maybe you could help me a little bit, guide me into Chime. But thank you very much. It was delightful to hear you because my energy is the same. I'm like, I teach people, adults, how to skip. It's like just you skip down the in the mall, just be happy. And I love that. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And you reminded me, I wanted to say, Todd and all the presenters, after you speak, make sure you put your contact info into chat and your links and everything so people can find out more about you. Anyone else have a question or a comment for Todd? All right. Nancy, you're going to go next, but first let me introduce you. All right. Nancy, where are you? Here we go. Reverend Nancy Adair, LCPC, CCS, is a CHIME graduate of the class of 2012. She is a therapist, a life coach, an artist, and an entrepreneur. Throughout her life, Nancy has maintained a passion for the arts and spiritual transformation. In her book, Achieve the Summit of Your Dreams, Nancy introduces feet on the ground strategies to turn your dreams into reality. Nancy helps you create your vision of success and harness your personal power to get your big dreams off the back burner. Nancy, take it away.
Thanks. I was so curious when you were introducing Todd, I'm like, did I write something for an introduction? So now I know what I put my regular bio in there. So I think I would like to start with what originally drew me to CHIME. I was an active member of the Portland New Church, and I had been for over a decade at the time that I looked into CHIME. And there were a couple of people that had gone through CHIME, and I had been to every CHIME ordination since the second year of CHIME's existence. And I had a dream about one of the women, Ronette Stoddard, who was ordained through CHIME and has since passed away. And she'd passed before I had this dream. And in the dream, she put her stole around me at ordination. So, and that's got its own story because an actual stole that Ronette made came back to me prior to my ordination. Through Sarah Shepley, which is part of my story, because I was drawn to CHIME because I wanted to be in community with people who were talking about the common denominators through all the world's religions and spiritual practices. That I felt like was missing in my life, even though I was active in a church that I considered like one of our, what are they called? Standard practices or principles is to the good and truth in all spiritual traditions. So I considered the Portland New Church, even though it's a Christian church, to be very interfaith in its way of being, and especially the Portland church. So I found what I was looking for in CHIME, and I also felt like the common denominators in religions were part of what I was looking for through a 12-step journey that I'd been on for I mean, it's been 43 years now, and it's been, over a decade since I was ordained with ChIME. So in 12-step programs, for those of you that aren't familiar, they really emphasize the need for a higher power. And I came to that from a family that was very, my family was riddled with alcoholism and drug addiction. And my family was also like, my dad in particular did not believe in religion. He'd been very harmed by standardized or, traditional religion. His family was Jewish, and he married my mother, who was Protestant, and they had a literal funeral for him. So, I was brought up by two scientists. Both my parents were scientists, and they believed in atheism and thought that religion was harmful, So I know that one of the things I wrote in my application was that as a child, I went to friends' homes on Saturday night for sleepovers as a little girl because I wanted to go to different churches on Sunday. And my family wasn't going. So I was planning it very, very early on. I also was, I might have said this already, a member of the Portland New Church. So ChIME wasn't housed at PNC yet. And I felt the connection, though, from the very get-go. What I've done since I actually want to say that I was also a 3-year student of ChIME. I think at the March retreat of my second year, the powers that be, the abbot, abbess, and dean of students took me aside and told me that they would not ordain me after the conclusion of the second year, that they felt I needed to consider a third year. So rather than what Todd was talking about, needing the pastoral authority, I needed humility. I thought, I've been leading ministry at the Portland New Church for over a decade. Why are you telling me I'm not ready to be ordained? I was very offended by the whole thing. And I thought, I even came back within a month and asked the staff because they'd said, we think you need to consider. I asked, was it my consideration? If I say, okay, I've considered this, but I think I'm ready, will you ordain me? And they said no. So it was quite a blow to my ego. And looking back, even before now, I realized how necessary that was. And in my third year, I did another internship at Bowdoin College, bringing a spiritual life group to Bowdoin. And that was just one of the most magical and wonderful aspects of my ministry, even though it was prior to graduation or being ordained. And since ordination, I continue to do the ministry that I've always done. I'm very active with the Portland New Church, and I continue to be a therapist. Since the pandemic, it's all been through telehealth, and I work from home, and I love that. So I'm not as active as some of my classmates in terms of doing services or rituals or weddings or funerals. And I'd like to speak a little bit to one of the arts ministry that has been primary in the last 5 years. I've just completed a 5-year project that I call Comfort Her Quilts. And it is 7 quilts that I've completed. And I call it Comfort Her with the last 3 letters capital HER, for human engagement and resiliency. And they are all meant to be empowering images for those who have been abused. And I am now looking for the places to exhibit them and taking it to the next stage. And I would love to have them reproduced and in domestic violence shelters and women's prisons. And it's all part of the whole project has come to me through meditation, including the images and so many aspects of the project and where it might go in the future. And I went to England to study the illustration in thread. That's a huge component. And those of you that do, when I put up my website, if you go on my website and under art, you'll be able to see some of the images in progress as they were being made. But that's a huge part of my ministry. And it was through ChIME to really, I had no idea going into ChIME, and I've been an artist all my life, how integral the arts ministry has been. And for me, it was Kathy Grisby, but it was Sarah Shepley as a student, a classmate, and now as someone that leads arts ministry through ChIME, and just watching her model that in all her trips to Ecuador and bringing art supplies to orphanages and elementary schools. It's like, that's still a model for me of what can be done in chaplaincy. One more thing I'll mention is for the past 2 years, I've also done a podcast that's titled Liars, Thieves, Gluttons, and Whores, which is taken from AA literature, that most addicts and alcoholics are liars, thieves, gluttons, and whores. For me, it was a catchy title, but it's all about, the tagline is stories from the dark and the light side of addiction and recovery. And it really has been a ministry to get the word out to people that are sober curious or just starting their journeys, what can be done. And this last season, season 3, was all dedicated to artists who are in recovery. So that's been great fun too. And I think that's enough out of me.
Wow, thank you so much, Nancy. It's so great to see people who are able to express their calling and their purpose through going to ChIME and even rediscovering something that you said you were all your life, and now you have an avenue and a way to bring it to the world. It's funny that you mentioned the 3-year thing. For those who don't know, ChIME is a 2-year program, and it's geared around people who might have a full-time job. It's an adult school, and so it's 1 night a week and 1 weekend a month, and books to read and reflections to write and that kind of thing. So it's very doable. And yet, Nancy, now we have students choosing to do 3 and even 4 years, I've seen, to stretch that out, because why give yourself extra pressure to get everything done in 2 years if you don't have to? And so it's sometimes the universe telling us we need to slow down and let go of ego more. And sometimes it's us saying we need to slow down and let go of the pressure to succeed and produce. And I think ChIME is great in accommodating anyone who wants to do 2, 3, or 4 years. So thank you. And don't forget to put your info into chat. Any clarifying questions for Nancy? Go ahead.
I have one, please. This is Lori. So Nancy, what changed for you in that 3rd year, that at the 2nd year, they didn't feel you were ready to ordain, but in the 3rd year, they did, if that's not too personal to ask?
No, I feel very open about it. And thanks for asking, Lori, because for me, what changed was a whole lot of acceptance at the very start of it. It wasn't as much about the year as just deciding to do a 3rd year. like accepting that, the place I worked for, Mercy Hospital, paid for my study at the Chaplaincy Institute. Like I had it all reimbursed. It wasn't like it was a big, hardship for me financially. It was accepting that someone saw in me that I needed more time. And I felt initially, I also felt like, and it was really hard that period from March through ordination in June was really difficult to, that was the real churning that we talk about in ChIME. Like the first year is churning, not chiming, and I felt like my churning was that March to June of my second year, watching my classmates ready themselves and prepare for ordination and not feeling a part of it when, remember, that was the most important piece for me, was finding community. And my classmates really showed up for me through some of my grief too. And then through the year, we got together every month through my third year. And when I was ordained and we got together for one of our monthly dinners, they said, Nancy, why don't you join us at the big people's table? And I'll never forget that. It was just so loving. So I think the process for me of gaining humility was one of acceptance that, other people knew better for me. One of my classmates asked if I thought the abbot and abbess didn't know better for me than what I knew for myself. And I said, hell no, I don't think they do. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Oh, thank you.
Am I on?
Yep.
Nancy, hi. It was lovely hearing you and lovely all these beautiful things that you do. I also am recovering. I stopped drinking in August 15th of 1987, and I've gone to the 12 Steps meetings all these years, and I've helped many people, and recently also stepped into Al-Anon because there's a lot that happened while I was in my family of origin. And so I continue to this day to do a lot of helping with clients and friends and people that I know. So I'd love to talk with you also about that. And there's just another avenue for my chaplaincy. So thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions for Nancy before we go on to Ari?
I'd love to just make a comment really quickly. Nancy, I really appreciate you sharing that about your second and third year. It's actually really encouraging to hear about programs that have that type of integrity, that they want to be really clear, like, we don't think you're ready for ordination. And that's something that can be lacking in some of these seminary programs. And so I really appreciate that you shared that, and that is a practice that ChIME has as an organization. It's really encouraging because they feel strongly about, helping people be in the right place to be a minister. So thank you for sharing that. It means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Devin. Good point. Okay, Nancy, you're going to put your contact info in the chat. And next up, we have our youngest seasoned alumni, or newest graduate, rather, Reverend Ari Hilton, was ordained as an interfaith chaplain in 2022. He is a speaker, a writer, and biblical scholar. He has created and taught religious education curriculum in Jewish, Christian, and interfaith, and currently teaches about LGBTQ+ and addiction issues in multiple settings. Ari holds a Master of Arts in Theology and Ethics from Bangor Theological Seminary, where he studied Jewish and Christian history, theology, and practices, completing his thesis, Transgender Spirituality, in 2007. He was ordained by ChIME completing a senior project, Transgender Resilience, Spirituality Through the Lens of Nature. And being an openly transgender queer person gives Ari an expansive and radically inclusive approach in all of his work. Seeking to always meet people where they are, he is now offering private pastoral care sessions to individuals specializing in LGBTQ+, spiritual work, addiction, and family systems. Ari lives in the western foothills of Maine, connected to many communities, including his extended family and synagogue in the Bay Area of California. Ari.
Okay, well, I don't need to actually share anything then. I didn't realize my bio was that ridiculously long. My apologies. I think that was my CV. Oops. So yeah, so you already figured out. So I'm Jewish, I'm trans, I have a master's in theology. I'm kind of the antithesis of the standard issue, if there is one, stereotypical ChIME student, incoming ChIME. When I came in, and I'm not gonna give you massive backlog story here because it's fascinating, but usually only to me is it that fascinating because it's my own story and my ego reminds me that that's nice. But move on to what you're supposed to be doing, which is helping other people. I for the really basic, I grew up both in Judaism and Christianity, and I would say the Judaism I grew up in was far more liberal. And I today am a Reconstructionist Jew. So the only funerals we have are for people who have actually physically died. Just as a modern note here, that as a Jew, this is my only thing, is that I am very passionate about showing modern Judaism in the world, and that, you know, the practice that I'm in, we practice repairing the world and seeing the divine in every single blade of grass and being. And so that's where I come out of this practice called Tikkun Olam, which means to repair the world. So I very much came out of that. I did go to seminary. I transitioned when I was 30. So 18, 19, something, 18, 19 years ago. And it was not an easy path to do in the middle of seminary. And I was very broken and beat down by that. And so by the time I came to ChIME, I was seeking a place where I was going to find more openness, more receptivity, where I wasn't going to be fighting tooth and nail against staff and faculty and my cohort and all of these things. And ironically, what I found was I had to fight tooth and nail against myself. Being an academic, being a lifelong learner, having multiple degrees, being a theologian, I spent the first solid year of ChIME between my ears, because that's my comfort zone. And I had people like Myra and Lisa and others going, hey, you got something down here too. You might want to tap into that. That's an interesting place to go check out. And over time, I did. And it was a process. And during that process, what I find, the gift I've gotten and that I now use out really was, thanks to the pandemic and thanks to this format that we have now of Zoom, is I was a member of the first cohort, as was another person in here. Not exactly. I was a member of the first cohort that was strictly on Zoom. We did not ever meet in person. We all met at the first ordination, but we didn't because I wasn't there. I was with my family in California. And at the second one, two of our former cohort members were no longer in our cohort. So we never actually all met in live time, but we all know each other. And what that has done for me in my current world, in all of the work I do, is that I am so comfortable on Zoom. I am so comfortable in this setting that I can have deep and meaningful conversations with people through the screen. And it's not as hard as sometimes people, I think, imagine it to be. And the people that I work with are always surprised. It's like, oh, wait, we're just having a conversation like we're in the same room. And we are, because the platform has allowed me to better read just this much, because I don't have any other cues to go off of. I've really got to listen to what somebody's saying. I've really got to be present to their face and to what's going on with them. And that has been a gift of this program, and being able to do it this way. And so I have several clients. I have randomly fallen into the smallest subset, I think, that somebody could find. I will just say I am a chaplain to sex workers in all different parts of the field and of the spectrum of sex work, because of my background being, it's your job. It's your job. It's not my job. What do you want to talk about? And I bring no judgment. I don't phase easily. So I jokingly tell the fact that I've had one client that the only times I have ever gotten embarrassed in my life were when I would say, please explain what you're talking about. And the client would run to the wall and take something off and show me what they were talking about. And I went, no, okay. Words would have sufficed in that moment, but thank you. I am positive now what's happening in your storyline. So I want to bring that as part of, you go through this very, theological, this very heart-centered in this moment and all of this. And then you realize you're looking at somebody across a screen who's holding something you've never seen and explaining it to you. And you go, wow, nothing prepared me for this one. Nothing in any of my training prepped me for this. But it's okay, because I know what's going on. I'm meeting somebody here. I'm not meeting them from here. I'm not going. So as post ChIME life, that has been post ordination ChIME life, I took a nice year off. I asked everybody kindly, please don't make me come to things. I don't want to be a spiritual companion. I don't want to do this stuff. I need a year off. Everybody said, okay, that's great. And then suddenly I was getting requests for things. And here I sit before you. I am creating a workshop right now for the asynchronous program that'll be happening. I'm creating a weekend workshop that you'll get to see my lovely face for way too many hours instructing on Judaism. And secondly, I get to sit here as the treasurer of the board of directors for ChIME. And it is something I never would have imagined. The chair of the board of directors and I are from the same cohort. So that kind of worked out well. And she and I have spent about a month. We talk very regularly to get ChIME to where we know it can be, as we're making some changes now 20 years in, not to the program, not to the staff, not that kind of stuff, infrastructure. And to make things run better so that the staff can really do their jobs and just be present. They don't have to worry about the detail stuff. So that is the biggest gift that I never would have seen coming in my life, is getting to be a part of this process now on a whole other side. And it's so amazing. And I think if you'd asked me even 5 years ago, I would have been, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Did you know they teach about the divine feminine? Ew, gross. I am never going to go there. So that's what happens, I think, as I break through in that. And other than that, I get to live my life. It's funny because last night, my cohort, in fact, we still meet every month on Zoom because we're used to seeing each other on a Tuesday night. We can't seem to break the habit. It's been year and a half since we were ordained, and we still meet. And there were 6 or 7 of us last night, and it was my turn to open and close. We still do an opening and a closing, and we have discussion, and we kind of like have a shortened class together, and we all check in. And we ended up having just this amazing time of being colleagues, of being friends, of still being students together, of this process that is ChIME, that is this chaplaining together, and we're there for each other, and we're talking, and you know, we're all have our notebooks out, and we're copiously taking notes, going, oh my gosh, I never thought of that, and how have you done that, and how did that happen? And it's like, just coming into those moments, I drop immediately in. And I know that for me, that is something I only do today because of the 2 years I spent in ChIME. I am not a drop into anything kind of human. As Myra can attest, I get really, really stuck up here. And I am familiar with 12-step myself. And yeah, so I know it's the between the ears. I'm well aware of this, which is all the problem, isn't it? So I just have I now truly have a huge heart space for ChIME. I'm so glad, I'm so thrilled that I get to be a part of it in a way that I never thought I would now. And getting to see people wanting to come and wanting to be a part of this, it takes on this whole new excitement for me. Just knowing, hey, we got this really special thing. And I wouldn't be who I am right now. I wouldn't be sitting in this apartment. I wouldn't be living the life I'm living. And so that's where I am in my post year and a half since ordination. And some days it really feels like it was yesterday. And sometimes it feels like it was a lot longer because of all I was gifted and able to incorporate into my work as a chaplain. So thanks, Myra.
Thank you, Ari. I'm so blessed and honored to have been a part of your ChIME journey. Your second year was my first year on staff. 5 years after I was ordained, someone from ChIME, the dean, called and said, do you want to apply for this new position we're putting together? So I got to be Ari's faculty advisor, and I always saw that heart space, and it's so great to hear you really identifying with it. And I'm so glad you came back from your 1-year hiatus and are involved in ChIME. We are so grateful to our alumni who fulfill so many needs for us, the spiritual companions, because we always hook up students with an alumni spiritual companion and lots of other support things. So we really help students come through ChIME as best we can, with as much support and love and heart-centeredness as we can. You reminded me, Ari, that I wanted to mention that ChIME is now offering totally online courses for people, you know, on the other side of the world who want to take part in ChIME's programs. So the asynchronous workshops that you mentioned, Asynchronous Workshop Experience, AWE, is now available for people doing the online program. And we have hybrid classes, so people who want to come to the workshops or the retreats but want to do classes online. So they're a little bit of both. And then, of course, we have the all-in-person people. And it's just been so great. We have somebody this year who's lives in Santa Fe, and she flew out for the retreat, and I think she's coming to the next one. So it's just a great thing. No matter how you come about taking part in ChIME, I think it's an enriching program for anyone. Thank you so much, Ari. Any clarifying questions for Ari?
Well, I do actually, Ari. It's so great to see you again. And I'm just a little curious about that chaplaincy to sex workers, and how did you fall into that? It sounds amazing.
Your guess is as good as mine. Um, Honestly, I fell into it because of a 12-step program and meeting individuals in the same program. And then saying, oh, by the way, I'm a chaplain, and then having people come to me and just doing some. I've actually been in hospice work for 30 years now. Basically, I started doing hospice when I was very, very young. No, I was in college, and it's just always been a part of how I approach things. And so I had many people that I met, and the word kind of spread that, oh, hey, here's this guy who is a chaplain, but he doesn't tell you that you're going to go to hell and burn if you don't stop your job. And I think that's kind of it, just sort of word of mouth. And I've had multiple dominatrixes who visit with me online. It's really tricky to talk about this some days. I just have to like, yes, I work with people. But I really, and I fell into it by meeting a lovely man who just broke down in tears one day talking about losing his partner. And he was in the kink community, and I just kept a neutral face. Thank you, Zoom. And went along with it. And I learned just so much from him, and it just continued on. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Ari. It just goes to show, I mean, all of us, everyone needs chaplaining. There's such a need in the world right now for people who are trained in deep listening and non-judgmental, no dogma or agenda chaplaining. Any other questions for Ari?
I was just going to say thank you, Ari.
All right. Last but not least, Reverend Jody Breton. ChIME class of 2011 is a shamanic practitioner, a teacher, minister, and mentor. After a 35-year career in Western medicine and a lifetime personal journey and initiation into spiritual awakening, Jody stepped fully into a path of service for her community nearly a decade ago as Essence of Spirit Ceremonies. Through the worldview of shamanism and many other universal wisdom teachings, she has provided support for many people worldwide. She brings to her shamanic healing and teaching practice 3 decades of study with human teachers and the path of direct revelation from the realm of spirit. Through an animistic worldview, Jody finds life-enriching support from the spirits of all things. She enjoys sharing her knowledge of the shamanic life way in small workshop settings and in one-to-one mentorship programs of her design. Through this process, Jody shares relevant, everyday uses and practical applications of an ancient, multicultural, spiritual practice which supports the enrichment of all aspects of our lives. Jody Breton.
Phew, that was long. Okay. I should have edited that down a little bit. But Aria, I echo you. You know everything about me now. But there's more. There's more. I think I echo at least several things that you've all have said already about my ChIME journey. I think I can sum it up pretty well as call and response. I'm not sure if I called ChIME, or pretty sure ChIME called me and I responded. And I would say that that's pretty much true about all the ways that I minister to my community. I didn't really start out knowing or even dreaming about being ordained and then showing up for people to perform weddings or to speak at churches or to do hospice work or any of those things. I've answered each thing that I do, I've answered a calling. I've just shown up and said yes. My entering ChIME was really kind of funny. I have always been extremely curious and a very spiritual person, and always lean towards the charismatic. Like I too would sleep over on Saturday nights, so my girlfriend, so that I could go to the Baptist church because their singing was so charismatic. Anything that raised it was a feeling. I knew there was something bigger than myself, that when I connected to it, I felt just transformed. And I didn't have a language for that. I didn't have words for that. And I just sought out those experiences that I felt deeply connected. Like Todd mentioned, I also spent a great part of my childhood in the Adirondack Mountains of New York, and I found so much solace in being in nature and connected to nature, and experienced a lot of mystical experiences that I didn't have any explanations for. And so I was becoming curious, excuse me, and wanted to study, but I didn't want to go to theology school. That just didn't seem to be exactly the fit for me. So I was at a friend's house one afternoon, and she had attended a workshop at ChIME. In fact, she had invited me, and I didn't know who the speaker was, which to me now seems so ridiculous now that I do know who he is, Matthew Fox. I said, no, I don't know who he is. I don't want to go. But she went and she bought several of his books, and I was over there one afternoon, and I opened up the book, and ChIME brochure fell out of the book. And I read the description of the school, and it was like all the chimes, all the bells, everything, the sounds, the horn sounded, and I knew that's where I needed to go. ChIME gave me definition and permission definition of what it was that I was seeking or feeling, and excuse me, permission to pursue it, to be it, to do it. So right after ordination, again, I didn't think that I was going to be pursuing officiating weddings, and people started asking me to officiate weddings. So before you knew it, I had a very robust wedding officiation practice, I'll call it. And I have been studying shamanism, as Myra read, for many years. My own personal practice layered with Christianity. ChIME gave definition to the merging of all of my belief systems. And so I furthered my shamanic studies, and it's a lifelong practice. And again, people started asking me about shamanism, so I started teaching a little bit about shamanism. And then before I knew it, I had several students, and then that morphed into offering workshops and, writing my own workshops and presenting my own workshops. And by 2018, I just decided that it was time to leave my traditional employment and step fully into this ministry of the mystical and traditional, very kind of eclectic. So I became, an entrepreneur, and again, I've just answered the calling. So it's been really rewarding for me because I show up for people that come to me, and I meet them where they're at, and I ministry to them in the ways in which they feel the most connected. So I help connect them with the divine within themselves, the divine without, in a myriad of ways. And ChIME was able to bring me to that place. It's been extremely rewarding, not only for myself, but I think for others that I've been able to touch their lives. I'm so grateful and happy that ChIME has invited me to be spiritual companions throughout the years, and most recently have had the privilege, and I really do think of it as a privilege, to teach intro to shamanism, if you will, an evening of shamanism for ChIME, which I just love. So to be able to merge ministry, teaching, performing ceremony, being able to officiate weddings and baptisms and memorials, I am living into my true nature. And I'm inspired and awed by listening to my colleagues and peers tonight. And I'm just so happy to be a member of this incredible community. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jody. I have to share that I've been to several of your shamanic journeys, and they are among the best I've ever done. You really have a gift for explaining and teaching and leading us into that deep, mindful and meditative state that just allows so much wisdom to come through. So thank you for all that you do. Thank all of you for all that you do and for coming tonight to talk about ChIME. Does anyone have any clarifying questions for Jody in particular before we go on to general ChIME questions? Speak right up. Okay.
I wonder if Jody would put her contact info in the chat.
I'm doing that right now as we speak.
Cool, thanks. I'm taking screenshots of these, so I'm capturing it all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for reminding that. And I'll put some stuff in there too, how to contact me at ChIME, and be sure to join us for our next open house on Wednesday, March 20th, where 2 alumni will who work with first responders will talk about how their ministries evolved. So that's Wednesday, March 20th. And I'll put that in the chat as well. Awesome. This was so great. Yes, Nancy.
So I just wanted to add, Myra, how exciting it is to be part of the panel tonight and have 7 potential ChIME students here and 1 already, accepted in to start in the fall. That just was like I had no idea, when I signed up that would be part of my experience. And it's just really fun to hear what's drawing in a new class of students. So, after that third year, ChIME hired me to work with students after doing services, to evaluate services and coach them. And I haven't done that work for many years now, since before the pandemic, and I miss it because it kept me so connected with the incoming students and the present body of students. So I'm really excited to see so many of you here. I hope you all come.
Yes, definitely. All right. So before we get into general questions about ChIME, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you all for being a part of this, and please stay for more after this announcement.